My guests today are no strangers to the power of resilience. Please welcome special contributor Natosha Reid-Rice to the show. And Tiran Jackson is here. He's an author and a motivational speaker who turned a horrific ordeal into a lesson in resilience for all of us. Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to season 2, Natosha. It's so good to have you. I want to start first, before we get into this incredible story and this testimony that you have. Let's just talk about what is resilience to each of you.
So for me, what I see resilience is it's that ability to be able to take something negative that's happened in our lives. We all face trauma, we all face pain, but to be able to use that and bounce back from it and use what we go through in recovering as positive growth and being able to become better versions of ourselves.
Well said. Well said. And Natosha?
I think if I summed it up, resilience to me is figuring out how not to only allow life to happen to you, but to happen to life.
How to keep living through it.
How to keep living, how to live fully.
Right, right. Let's talk about what happened to you and sort of the biggest lesson in resilience that God has given you in your life, I imagine.
Well, 5 years ago, my wife and I, we were celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary. We decided we were going to take a trip. We were going to go to the Bahamas, spend some time in paradise. What was supposed to be 5 great days turned out to be something tragic. On the 3rd day that we were there, we got on a small boat to go on an excursion. And 5 minutes into the ride, the boat exploded. I found myself waking up face down on the surface of a burning boat. As a result of this, my wife, she passed away from the accident. I found myself in a hospital bed in the Bahamas having to call my son. He was 12 years old at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And tell him over the phone, son, your mom's not coming back home. And on top of that, I was in a situation where I was in a true state of despair. I was in a hospital bed and I saw my vital signs go from green to yellow to red. And I thought all was lost. I thought the next time I closed my eyes was going to be the last time I closed my eyes. But by the grace of God and through finding resilience, and there was a moment when I was going through recovery where God told me I had to be resilient, that I had to overcome the obstacles not only that I faced at that moment, but there were many obstacles still to come.
And I want to do this. I want to pause because our viewers right now are seeing pictures of you and your beautiful wife. Tell us her name. Tell us just a little bit about her and what this meant to lose this beautiful woman that you'd been married to for 15 years.
So Malika was the love of my life. We went to college together. We had really started to build a life together. This was my wife, the mother of my child, my best friend. You have all that wrapped up into one, and you're thinking that your future is going to be with this person forever. And so to have something so tragically happen so suddenly was something that I never saw coming, but I had to deal with. She was a beautiful spirit, had a big heart, loved to laugh, a little comedian on the side and everything, but you know, her personality definitely showed in everything that she did, and she really cared for people and did a lot to make things better for others.
And so, and thank you for sharing Malika's story, because she's a beautiful woman, and I wanted to make sure that our viewers knew her as well. The loss for you, though, was compounded, right? You're having to call a 12-year-old and say, Mom is not coming home. But you're also going home a very different man in a very different condition as well. Explain what happened to you physically in this horrible accident.
So physically, I had multiple injuries, but the most significant of which was that my left leg had to be amputated for me to survive. My left foot was severed, and when I was in the hospital, they tried to reattach it, and an infection started going through my body. So I ended up having to go, as I said, through multiple surgeries. But the most significant was when I woke up and saw that my left leg below the knee was missing, and realized that I was going to be different. That I was going to have to face not only the emotional pain and trauma of losing Malika, but also this physical change as well.
Is that something you told your son as well, or did you wait till you get, I mean, that's so much to have to tell. I'm thinking, aren't you, about this 12-year-old. You told him that in the conversation as well?
I didn't, because at that point in time, it hadn't happened yet. So my first conversation with him, I had to reassure him that Dad was going to be all right, even though I didn't know if that was going to be the case.
Right, and we're looking at pictures of him here right now as well. Looks just like that, but I see Malika too. So your lesson in there's nothing that matches this experience in your life, right?
Right.
Where did you start in terms of having to be a father who was in mourning for a wife? How did your recovery start?
So this was not easy. And anybody who's going through adversity, you go through these challenges and realize that you got a lot to overcome. I had a lot to process. I had to deal with the emotional pain, the survivor's remorse, the depression that came along with all of this. And at the same time, I had to figure out how to be there for him, because his loss was different. He lost his mom, the woman who was closest to him as he was growing up. So in trying to figure out how I was going to be there for him, I knew physically I had to recover so I could physically, literally be there with him, but also emotionally go through the grief counseling and therapy in order to be able to rebuild my heart and understand how to be a parent to him.
Right. And Natosha, I want to bring you in just before we go to break here, because in your role as a minister, this is something that you talk people through, but it's hard to, I imagine, have to start with just even finding the right words and helping people sort of rebuild their resilience.
Well, like you said, rebuild your heart. Like, that's seen and unseen. Those are in those secret spaces. And so just even listening to your story, I'm so moved by the ways in which you approached it, because you gave yourself space to grieve. And even in that grieving, you gave your son space to grieve, because he saw that his daddy could grieve. Then that means he could grieve.
And that we could just be human in this space. And I think that's sort of that first step, right?
And you allowed your wife to live through you and still be there. And you just brought her here.
You sure did. We're going to take a break right here, but continue this conversation, because it's steps. I mean, that's a grief process in multiple ways. But your story of resilience is what's still so very impressive.